the conclusion I draw from this is that when in the run-up to partition, in the period before partition, in the North, as in all political movements, there are all sorts of things that are dragged in by the hair sometimes to support a view, but actually the at root of it was that the Unionists were told that if you stick with the British Empire, you'll be better off. And what we can see conclusively is that they were sold a big fat lie. They're worse off. In fact, the whole of the community, not just the Unionists, of course, are worse off having stuck with Britain. And that's a pattern you see in relation to colonial possessions all around the world. So from an economic perspective, a purely economic perspective, I would say that if people want to change their living standards for the better, the best way of doing that would be to get rid of the border. That's the first most important point, and reunify the country. If we move on to the fourth and final chart, and it relates very much, I was fascinated to listen to Professor Luft this morning. I thought it was a really excellent talk. And what I have here is, if I remember correctly, it's per capita GDP growth in Germany in the 22-year period before reunification and subsequently. And of course, what happened is that there has been growth in Germany since reunification. Living standards have increased. No one could possibly deny it. It would be foolish to deny it. But actually, the rise in living standards has been slower than in the period before German reunification. And I think there's a good reason for that. And when I was preparing this, I was trying to find, and that's one of the reasons I've had to go to countries like India and China for my examples. I was trying to find an example of a successful reunification in Europe, and I couldn't find one. I had to go back to Bismarck, I think, to find one. And I think there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is what's necessary to make reunification work is some of the elements that made, in a strange way, and perhaps temporarily, but nevertheless significantly, made the independence that the Republic of Ireland enjoys work. That is, you have to be able to trade with the rest of the world, and to take advantage of that capacity, you have to invest. And the trouble is, in the period since Bismarck, the people that run our economies aren't that interested in investing. They invest less and less. I mean, one of the reasons that's happened to the German economy is because in the 1970s, Germany invested 24% of its GDP, and now it invests just 17% of its GDP. So the trend growth rate of the German economy has declined as a result. Now, still, that's significantly better than Britain, but actually, very worryingly, it's much better than the level in Ireland, because the level in Ireland has hit 10% of GDP. And there's a thing in economics called capital consumption, which is the capital you use up in production and in wear and tear and depreciation and so on. And it's hit that level. So about 10% of GDP every year in Ireland is consumed. It just it dilapidates, deteriorates. It's used in production. And so unless you have a level higher than that, literally things will start to fall apart. So that's the danger for a country like Ireland. And I think actually currently, if I remember rightly, Portugal. So you need to have a political and economic system which allows you to direct investment. So I think the answer to this is yes, reunification would be an enormous step forward, but to really benefit from reunification and to not to have a half-hearted or aborted or inadequate reunification. What's really required is that the new political and economic system that arises from the dissolution of both states either side of the Irish border is one where investment has to be directed, because relying on big firms in the way that the German reunification was done doesn't work.